Shock Piece: The Search for Freedom, a novel by C. Nguyen. Chapter 24. An, the War Widow. After a few turns deeper into the labyrinth of shanty dwellings farther off the main street, Sue poked her head through the front louve window. The room was empty and sparsely furnished. There was a shrine with a photograph of An's deceased husband on a shelf with an incense burner in front of it. A glass of water stood forlornly in place, the only offering to the spirit An could afford instead of the more extravagant sweets or fruits. Seeing no one, Sue rattled on the iron trellis door. "Open up, An. It's me, Sue." An got up slowly from her bed, then walked tentatively to the door and opened it a small crack. "What is it, Sue? I'm not very well. Can you come back later?" Sue ignored the lack of welcome in her greeting and pushed the folding door harder to one side, walking right in. The only furniture in the three-room abode was a single divan of simple mango wood in the furthest room. A thin, battered grass leaf mattress was laid on top of it, with a pillow and a thin sheet as a blanket. The faint light shone through the louve window, illuminating the inner room that had a small ceramic-tiled bench in a corner, a cooking nook without any cupboards or drawers, a basic three-point clay stove, and a little snuffed-out chunk of partially burned wood still inside, saved for the next occasion. On top of the simple clay stove was a watery rice congee in a saucepan. There was black soot all around the saucepan and up the walls. There was not a chimney in sight. The nook was not designed with a ventilator for this cooking method. Saigon had recently turned back to primitive cooking, fueled with wood fires, coals, or even paper. Some wet green wood would certainly fill the place with choking smoke that stung the eyes. A jar of coarse, grayish salt and a small bottle of cheap, salty fish sauce were standing nearby. The toilet and shower cubicle was a walled-off rectangular corner with a flimsy curtain for privacy. Pitifully, the door must have been taken off its hinges and sold off recently for food and necessities. Everything seemed to have its own value in times like this. Ironically, privacy was worth much less. The adjacent area was set up as a wet section for washing up and laundry, with a tap extending from the wall and a bucket under it. The floor was sunken by 10 centimeters to prevent any splashing of water over the edge. This was a typical dwelling in a communal apartment building and was of the standard size for a small family unit with no children. An had been Sue's best friend since primary school. However, their life had little in common after the age of 12, as An had managed to finish her high school and marry a Marine while still in her teens. She had been a child bride of 18. Sue was out earning her living, helping her mother as a vegetable vendor at the local market. Her education was cut short prematurely after primary school. Then her mother passed away suddenly, and Sue was forced to become a bar girl when she was just 20. For over 10 years, the two lost contact. Anne tried to avoid gossip from neighbors about her association with a call girl. When Sue turned up in her outrageous outfits with short skirts and revealing tops. Nevertheless, their friendship was anchored in their childhood, and like most, continued into adulthood and was destined to last a lifetime. Anne became a young war widow just a year before the fall of Saigon, and this turn of events brought them together again. The two lonely women had to find the means to stay alive in a communist world in which they were largely ignored. They belonged to the two most detested classes of citizens, one a war widow of the now defunct South Vietnamese armed forces, and the other one an ex-American call girl. Sue had helped Anne where she could, and ever since, She knew that An's furniture and personal jewelry were being sold off to keep her alive, even including the bathroom door. An had been living on watery congee and plain salt or fish sauce for some time. Her health was deteriorating, with such a poor diet leaving her weak and frail. The war widow's pension was cut off immediately after the new government took control of South Vietnam. An had tried to manage on her own for a couple of years, but had now come to an end. There was not a single item left in the house that could be sold, down to the smallest item. Her kitchen utensils, clothes, even her late husband's used marine bath towels had gone to the second-hand market last month. She was not clever enough to start a new venture, knowing that she would fail miserably if she tried. An was also timid and cringed every time a stranger looked at her. When their gaze taking in her beautiful face and gorgeous body, it made her tremble with fear. Despite her poverty, she had retained her delicate beauty and grace. "You are so thin now, An. You just look like a young child, honey," Sue declared, seeing how much weight her friend had lost. Sue placed into An's hands a packet wrapped in 2 layers, old newspaper on the outer and banana leaves on the inner side, tied neatly by banana strings. It contained a cup of boiled rice and a piece of pork belly with poached duck egg, slow cooked in fresh coconut juice and fish sauce, a delicacy that Anne could barely afford these days. She licked her lips, inhaling the aroma of pork and rice, and swallowed her saliva discreetly. Anne suddenly realized that she was hungry after all. She had had nothing in her stomach except a bowl of watery congee and salt since the night before. "Here, Anne, you better eat this while it's still warm." "Geez, you look terrible, honey." Sue could not resist her remark. Then she untied the banana strings, removed the outer newspaper, and pushed the packet toward her friend. The exposed contents, in fresh green banana leaves, shining with pork fat, looked delicious to Anne. Anne glanced at Sue, tears streaming down her face. She was lost for words. The comfort of knowing there was someone in the world who cared was already nourishment for her body and soul. "Why, Sue, what about you? Did you have anything to eat today?" Anne knew that everyone was trying to manage in truly basic living conditions each day, from breakfast to lunch to dinner. Having eaten enough at the end of 24 hours meant another day struck off the calendar. Let tomorrow come and then worry about whether it may include a meal of some sort. Sue nodded. "Yeah, I've had my dinner already. You eat, Anne. I worry about you every day. You can't live like this anymore." They both went over to the cooking nook and squatted down on the 2 little wooden stools, the only furniture that had not been sold. Anne hesitated, not wanting to eat in front of her friend and reveal her obvious hunger. Her little remaining dignity was all she had left of her pride, and Anne was certain that she would devour the packet of rice and meat like a hungry dog after tasting the first mouthful. "I'll eat later, Sue. How's your business?" "Very busy lately, darling. The bastards are spending like mad. The comrades really adore gorgeous southern girls, you know. They're holding wads of cash like stacks of newspaper and are ready to throw it away on drinks and girls. They're thieves. Of course, they are robbing the South without a hint of remorse, and now they're ready to indulge themselves." After a brief moment of searching for the right words, Sue gave up and commented, "You look terrible. Come and work with me, sweetie." Anne smiled weakly. "I know you care for me, Sue. I'm very fortunate to have a friend like you. I don't think I can cope without your help." She shook her head. "But what can I do? You know I'm useless in many ways." "You can help me with my beer joint, Anne." Then she corrected herself immediately, sensing horror in Anne's large, round eyes. "I mean, you can come and help me with the general duties there. Not as a beer girl, baby. I love you like a sister, and I would never allow you to do that, honey." Anne was immediately sorry for her spontaneous reaction a moment ago. "Oh, Sue, I didn't mean that at all, but you know I'm very shy and uncomfortable in the presence of strangers." "Yeah, right, silly girl. You can't avoid that anymore. Just look at yourself. I bet you haven't looked in the mirror for ages, have you?" Sue stood up abruptly and went inside the bathroom. She brought out a hand mirror and, as if to prove her point, pushed it toward Anne. Look at yourself, Anne. Anne took the mirror and turned it away, not daring to look at it. She knew she was very thin, and her eyes were dull and lifeless. She was afraid to see their blankness staring back at her. Anne took the mirror and turned it away, not daring to look at it. She knew she was very thin, and her eyes were dull and lifeless. She was afraid to see their blankness staring back at her. You must pull yourself together and get out of there. I promise you I won't let anything happen to you, Anne. Sue sat down next to her friend again. Anne put her hand gently onto Sue's shoulder and said, Yes, I know you care for me, Sue, and I know I must go out and work or do something, but I'm a coward. I haven't the energy or will to do anything. I'm sorry I worry you so much. Sue stood up, the stool tumbling behind her. Yeah, you're damn right. I don't know why. It must be bad luck that our paths crossed, Anne. Why am I your friend? You're as pure as a spring fountain and as sweet as an angel. And I'm a lowly prostitute. But here we are. The two of us must find a way to get out of this shitty hell. We mustn't let them bury us alive, Anne. Suddenly she was angry, not because of her friend's reluctance to fight for her existence, but for the circumstances that had brought them together. They were helpless, and their welfare was utterly ignored. Somehow Sue could not resist feeling responsible for her friend, for no reason other than their childhood connection. She knew she had her limitations. She was a woman as much as Anne. Anne burst into tears. Please don't be angry with me, Sue. Her soft, pitiful pleading made Sue even angrier. She knew that she had to be tough, tougher than most to weather the storm. She could not cry as she wanted to, keeping her voice steady and without emotion. Sue coaxed, Don't be absurd, silly girl. I'm not angry with you, but at myself, for not being able to help you more than I could. I must insist that you get out of there and work with me tomorrow night, Anne. Think carefully, girl. That's the best I can offer, and you'll hurt me deeply if you don't turn up. See you at 6 o'clock. Be on time. Sue left her dejected friend and walked out of the house quickly, avoiding any response from Anne. She knew she was betraying her closest friend's trust. She knew there was nothing Anne could do but reluctantly become a beer girl eventually. Sue's first beer was in District 3, not far from the high-rise communal ghetto where she lived. Those high-rise communal apartment blocks were courtesy of the Americans, who provided housing for homeless families after the Tet Offensive in 1968. They were centers of dense population with the low-income and laborer classes in Saigon, where Sue found most of her old colleagues in this neighborhood. Following the trend of the country at that time, they brought the trade of the flesh to the level of the street bar, or street prostitution, to provide services for the comrades whose wives and family were still in the north. The illegal aspect of the trade did not deter many other ex-bar girls from launching their own business along the streets because that was the only trade that thrived. After a while, District 3 became a rowdy, debased area, and that attracted corrective action from the new government. The magnitude of corruption and bribery was on the rise in every direction among the party members. The prolonged civil war had buried most of their youth in the jungles, and now they were out making up for lost time. The authorities received protection money from most of the bar owners who were warned before any raids. A clean sweep was in operation to satisfy some high-ranking party members, to see that there was some corrective action at least. With the periodical raids from the police, Sue and the rest of them would move their street bars from one district to the next. Legal action from one district security bureaucrat in his territory would mean bribing the next security comrade, who would go on to receive protection money. The beer moved from district to district. They were a thorn in the side for some, but a golden egg in the hands of others. The authorities ignored the problem until they received urgent orders to move it further along to the next district around Saigon, a merry-go-round situation that was impossible to eradicate until the late 1980s. Bribe and outright possession by force were then the practice. Only Northerners had cash and power, and they were taking literally everything from the South to the North, from small necessities like soap, sugar, rice, meat, fruits, and even a small baby doll, to larger items like a Seiko no driver with 2-window wristwatch, an electric fan, a bicycle, a radio, a cassette player. All were riches to those treasure hunters, and now including Southern girls and women. Mobile street bars forced by police raids to migrate to other parts of the city were now set up on the front pavements of Drin's neighborhood. Drin was often frustrated by the constant commotion outside her place. The young girl of 15 used to sit in her front room and study at night. Despite the noise, she had to concentrate intensely to block out the sordid activities around her. However, there were times she failed. The unavoidable sounds reverberated through the locked wrought iron gate, filling her ears with revolting exchanges between bar girls and their clients. One late night, when everything had quietened down, Drin jumped in horror to hear the whisper of a rough male voice through the small openings of the iron gate. "Come on, baby, come closer, and I'll show you how you'll lose your virginity with my hard tool." Drin shook with fright and rage, unable to move. The shock of hearing those dirty words paralyzed the teenage girl. She did not dare to look up, even though there were a good 5 meters between where she was sitting and where the voice was coming from. Her heart was thumping fast and loud in her ears. She choked with emotion and could hear screams in her head trying desperately to get out. The eerie silence was very still in the night, except for the very disturbing heavy breathing through the cracks. The man laughed aloud, satisfied his joke had frightened the young girl. He moved away from the gate and left, still laughing.